Hi, Béatrice. So we know that we're in a big trust crisis that cut across every type of organization, every country, every industry. Can you help us unpack this word, trust, a little bit? What does that crisis look like in practice?
What academic literature shows, there is on the one hand side societal trust, the glue that melts us together, that allows me to trust somebody I don't know already. And there is another type of trust, which is the systemic trust. The one that is most at risk right now is the systemic one. And that seems to be something that is very, very pronounced in polarized societies like the United States, but is becoming quite widespread. And it is obvious that it is broken between great powers, that there is a rivalry instead of the partly trusted former relationships, that it is breaking down between citizens and institutions. Yeah. And also business and academia and experts.
As I'm trying to be hopeful here in that conversation, what is the one solution which is, from your perspective, could make really a big difference to restoring trust at the systemic level?
So I'm going to suggest something which is pretty radical. It's not going to happen straight away.
Yeah.
But I think in the end, if we take this crisis of trust seriously, we're going to get there. And that is that we need to regulate social media. Now, why do I say that? If you have different people with different opinions who don't trust each other, don't think that they disagree because the other person is in bad faith, you can try to bridge that gap if you agree on the same set of facts. If you don't even have the same facts, if you're in an alternative fact environment, you can't even start that conversation. And I think the big thing that has changed in Western democracies over the last 25 years is this advent of social media, which propagates narrowcasts information to subgroups in the society, a different set of facts than what somebody else did. I might get, what you might get, what 25 other groups of people might get. We have no common ground anymore.
Yeah.
So I think, although it's difficult to imagine regulating social media, it's such a powerful force, everybody uses it. It's beginning already in terms of mitigating teenage depression. And I think we're going to get to a point where not only do we recognize that social media is corroding teenage health,
yes,
it's also corroding adult understanding. And we need to do something about that.
And so can I ask you what that would look like concretely? What would that regulation look like? What would it target specifically?
So there was a moment about 5 years ago when social media platforms were under pressure to moderate the content more aggressively. And if people were making stuff up, literally making stuff up in a way that was going to spread, dangerous ideas, that would be taken down, rather than having algorithms which deliberately upvote stuff. Anything, if the logic is, if I provoke you as the user, you will be addicted to my service, then I'm going to spread lies. But if there's social pressure or regulatory pressure to take down fake content, I think that's the direction that we need to go in.
And if we talk about regulation, then again, we hit this complexity of needed international collaboration and coordination, multilateralism, which is in very short supply right now, Béatrice. So what's your perspective? How do we go about that?
And first of all, by remembering why we built multilateralism, because there are common goods, peace, most importantly among them, stability, financial stability, the IMF, and growth, shared growth, and the global commons, last but not least, the planetary boundaries that need to be respected. And we know this in theory, but we don't have the institutions in practice that are working for this.
Yeah.
All of that requires collaboration across countries, across regions, and not all of them have to be part of it. At the COP, as one example, a coalition of willing has formed that is implementing all of them, collective action, carbon pricing at the national level, not voluntary compliance markets. This was one of the best news from the last climate COP in Brazil. A second example, you only need two regions of the world, Europe and China, to have enough incentives to actually decarbonize, i.e. provide the technology and the funding to completely decarbonize the rest of the world, in particular the emerging markets and low-income countries. We have a paper that in the last Paris report that we published with CEPR and the Hoffman Center, and it shows that the two regions are large enough to have suffer enough of the damage. You see, coalitions of the willing don't need to be enormous.
Yeah, it's just a critical mass of those bearing the cost of inaction, basically.
Exactly. There has to be a critical mass. And that is the participation constraint.
Yes.
This is actually something, again, which the academic literature has identified and can explain. And we now will probably have to see more of that in practice because the old multilateralism, which always had the intention, at least, of being for everybody, that is not going to work for the moment because of this breakdown with trust and because we know that a sufficient number of countries will just not play.
Yeah.
And actually, when it comes to politics and trust, one country can internalize the cost of low trust because it has, bad political outcomes in that one country. So I think you can almost do it without collaboration.
Oh, give me an example of that.
Well, look, if in America you don't regulate, social media and then all sorts of lies are spread, you get, vaccine non-compliance in COVID, you get, election outcomes that people don't believe. That's very much born internally in the US. And so I think there are plenty of internal incentives in one country to clean up your own information space and not have this fragmented sort of, siloed, I have my truth, you have your truth, and therefore we can't talk to each other.
And the question is also, what are the mechanisms to get to these coalitions?
Yes.
Because one of the problems of creating coalitions is always that if people sitting around the table and are wondering, how much does that cost me versus you? That is a big obstacle for a result. And one of the mechanisms to do this is to have a path for institution building, which maybe doesn't start right now. We call this the veil of ignorance, because then the interests are not so clear. That what is your interest, what is my interest, we know then right now, but we don't know exactly in 5 years from now what our interests are going to be. So we may be able to agree on things that have a long-term duration, which is exactly what we need right now, behind this veil of ignorance. The European Union needs to be rebuilt. We need to have, coalitions of the willing around defense, for instance, which are very long-lasting. In principle, for hundreds of years in order to be credible. And that is more easily done if it is built within such an institution that has a clear long-term plan. Yeah. And I don't only see my benefit right now.
Yeah.
In the short run.
Final word. You are academics. You are the experts on the topic. If tomorrow you were given the job of the politician, right? What's the one action you would start with?
I think the inspiration from this week in Davos, has been Mark Carney of Canada. Don't just believe in the power of values, because that turns out to be limited, but the value of power. You have to build up power to be taken seriously in a world where trust has atrophied and values don't bind allies together anymore. You need to come to the table with power.
Yeah. Thank you very much.